Okay, my next stop is Michael Florentino Cellars, and I'm talking with Bradley, and he is the owner and winemaker. And we're talking about what winemakers look for during fermentation.
So one of the keys is actually not necessarily during fermentation, but right before you start fermentation, because that's when you can make any adjustments that you want. So we're looking at some Sangiovese here. We've went and taken some numbers on there. And so for this particular one, the acids look great. We looked at the Brix level, they're 24.1, right exactly where we want it. So this particular one, we're ready. It's a nice balanced must. Now the key is tomorrow we're going to kick it off on our fermentation. What we're looking for now is to make sure we get nice even heat and nice long fermentation. And so we'll be going through monitoring what the sugar levels are and what the heat levels are all the way through fermentation. And then as it's going, we'll slowly feed the yeast with nutrients to make sure we got a nice long, not too hot, not too cool fermentation. And then in about a 14-day period, we'll actually press it off, and we'll have the perfect wine.
Okay, so it takes about 14 days for fermentation?
14 days from crush through. We actually crushed these last night. We let them sit 24 hours before we do lab work, so we're actually doing lab work on it this morning. That allows the juice from the inside of the skins. You'll get some differences between your acid, your pH, and even your sugar levels in that first 24 hours as the different, as the skins in the juice, some of the potassium and other things will come out of the skin. And that's the real thing why you have to wait that 24 hours before you really know what you have.
Okay. What could go horribly wrong during this process? I mean, I know it's sort of a, like you're saying, it's sort of a waiting game and, different things. What can go horribly wrong?
I guess one of the things is you can get, a stuck fermentation. One of the things why you're working about heat, because each yeast has a heat level that it needs to be into. And so if you actually get a fermentation that gets too hot, that can actually reduce the number of cycles. So again, a yeast is constantly multiplying, and they'll go so many multipliers. So you put in a few thousand and end up with a few million. Well, if it only goes 7 families through instead of like 10 to 14 because it gets too hot, which kind of shortens their life, then you could actually end up with a fermentation that slows down before it actually gets dry.
Okay.
And then if that happens, basically what you have to do is again make the adjustment if you need to cool it down by pumping over or something else, and then you actually have to restart it at a lower level.
Okay, very interesting. Just the whole process from, like picking the grapes to kind of going through the fermentations, adding yeast. I mean, there's so many steps before it gets into my glass.
Yeah, and this is the, again, you have alcohol in 24 hours. I mean, 14 days. But it takes another year and a half for these red grapes to actually gain back that flavor, get the oak concentrated in the barrel. And so it really is a process. It's easy to make the alcohol. It's a little harder to make the actual wine. And that's why it takes time and care. And that's why, again, your artisan producers are all doing this by hand, taking the time, looking at each barrel and each batch independently, as if it's our own.
And that's one thing I love about Woodinville is it's so many artisan producers. You're all hands-on. You're taking the grapes through all the steps, and you make some really wonderful wines. So very much appreciated, Brad. Thank you so much, and cheers.
All right. Thanks, Joanna.